People Helpers again. I'm Deanna Rossi.
It's Gregg Rossi.
And we're excited to share some knowledge with you today. Right now, as we're filming this, we're heading into the holiday season. And we've been seeing that there is that spike that always comes at this time of year for DUI. So we want to talk a little bit about that and how to stay safe. Now, first of all, DUI, DWI, OVI, we're going to talk about the differences of those. But before we even get into all that, the big thing, our kind of public service announcement to all of you is just don't do it.
Right.
Hopefully you never find yourself in this situation, because even if you've had, what are we saying? Not even one cocktail, right. Not even one, because each person's body weight and whatever could throw you over a limit. So the thought process is,
well,
not at all.
Don't drink and drive at all. However, when I'm in a trial and the issues are under the influence, I tell a jury, it's not illegal to drink and drive. It's illegal to be impaired under the influence of alcohol or drugs and drive. Now, that's a distinction. It's an important distinction, but it's at this time, holidays, an OVI, DUI, DWI can ruin your life.
Let's do that. What are the differences?
Right now, it's really OVI, operating a vehicle under the influence of drugs and or alcohol.
Okay.
We used to call it driving under the influence, DUI, or DWI, driving while intoxicated or impaired. Basically, OVI is what's used in Ohio right now, operating a vehicle under the influence of
But they all mean pretty much the same
thing.
thing.
They mean the same thing. And the legislature's gotten tough over the last few years and really have enhanced the penalties based upon your prior record, whether you refuse, a whole bunch of different circumstances. It is a very, very complicated area. However, it's one of my favorite areas to practice because there's so many interesting issues, constitutional and statutory, but then evidentiary. Sure. And I've had a number of jury trials dealing with OVIs, and I've been very successful in those. There's a lot
But our rule of thumb.
Yeah.
Let's go over that. We're going to say this multiple times during this podcast.
Don't have anything and drive, period.
Get a driver, Uber, Lyft. What are other options?
Yeah, I mean, taxis, friends. The thing is, in this holiday season, it's too easy to have one or two, and the next thing you know, you're caught up in the festive moment. And
or you have the person who drove, or the person who drank the least drive, but they're still over. That's still not a good idea.
But listen, the police are doing their job.
Yeah.
They want people to be safe. They don't want people to be impaired on the roadway to avoid accidents, injuries, fatalities. I mean, we don't want this situation. We want to talk about it because, unfortunately, reality of it is that people make mistakes and find themselves under these circumstances where they may have been charged or stopped.
And so a lot of people think they don't need an attorney. Hey, this happens so often. I've known other people who've gone through this and they handled it themselves. This is something you absolutely would need an attorney. And you told me something about when you can get an attorney.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you're pulled over, you can call your attorney right then and there. You have access to an attorney, and you can be helped throughout the process. It depends upon what you're stopped for. Then they have to have a basis to hold you or detain you, and then investigate further.
So you don't have to wait until you're brought into a police station. You can actually say, I want to call an attorney from the scene.
Absolutely. And so everybody should have an attorney that they trust and can rely upon and seek that advice, and hopefully they'll answer. And then the next step is, if asked to get out of the car and you're going to submit this field sobriety test, should you, shouldn't you? Big issue. Again, you can ask.
You've all heard it, right?
Point.
In layman's terms, we've heard, should you blow?
Well,
blow or don't blow.
That's the next step, because that doesn't happen until typically
after the field sobriety test.
Yeah, and then either portable at the scene, or if you're under arrest, if they had probable cause. And then you get to the issue, should I submit to the chemical test or should I refuse the test? And there had always been a rule of thumb, historically, that under most circumstances, every situation is fact dependent, but you should refuse. That was always the rule of thumb. Well, the legislature said too many people were refusing. They now, you can look back 20 years. The penalties are more severe if you refuse. You get a 1-year license suspension.
So they're looking back 20 years for how many times you refused, or a previous
both
DUIs?
A prior and a refusal,
wow.
Correct. And next thing you know, all of that gets enhanced. So every situation is very fact dependent. That's why before you make that decision, you can reach out again to the attorney and say, what should I do? And maybe get some advice.
So people who think they can handle this without an attorney because they've had a friend who handled it without an attorney, probably not a great idea.
Not a great idea. But see, what we're talking about now through the process, at that point in time when it's happening in real time. Mm-hmm. Once you're charged, absolutely you need competent counsel who's experienced in OVI. There are so many nuances in the law dealing with the license suspension and dealing with technical constitutional issues, suppression issues, proof issues, medical issues.
I know. We've seen a couple. I know that you
seen a number.
worked on that where they weren't actually impaired, but they had a medical condition.
Right.
And so then obviously the police officers would assume they were impaired from drugs or alcohol, but it was a health condition that seemed that way.
But the officers are trained to ask that. Do you have a knee injury? Do you have a back injury? Do you have something that would prevent you from being able to do this test? They may ask you if you have a neurological condition, something that may affect the administration of those tests. And then it's up to them should they do that. There are some other non-standardized tests that they can do. But this is a very technical area. And then there are a lot of OVI charges in the area courts that are being handled at the lower level. Youngstown Municipal, Struthers, all the county courts. This is something that these judges and prosecutors see on a regular basis. Very complicated. You need an attorney. Yeah. And so my advice to you is get the counsel during the process, get the counsel when the unfortunate or you have the misfortune of making maybe a poor decision, or maybe you're not guilty. I've had 3 acquittals on refusal OVIs with 3 out of 3, which is unusual. So they couldn't be proven that they were under the influence of alcohol at the time. And those were refusals, and the jury can consider the evidence of refusal as evidence of whether or not you were impaired. But there could be all kinds of reasons why someone may choose to refuse. I have asthma. I have another medical condition. I don't trust the situation. I want a blood test. Or you could simply refuse because you don't want to have that test result.
Now, here's the thing. Hear all that smart stuff that he just said? It sounds like, oh my gosh, it's going to cost me a ton of money. And it will cost you to have an attorney. But let me tell you, the cost of not having an attorney is going to be so much more. And we really need to talk about that.
So from your point of view, Deanna, from your experience, how does a person who had an OVI, convicted of an OVI, how's that affected them from not the courts, I want to talk about that, but financially with respect to their money matters? Well,
obviously, you're going to have the cost of the court costs and the fees, and if you do hire an attorney, the attorney's fees. But that's actually going to save you money, the attorney, because in the long run, there's a couple of different things. You're going to have an effect on your car insurance,
Absolutely.
Right? So that's going to increase. In addition to that, maybe it's going to affect your job and employment and your income coming in. So if you need to be able to get to work, but now you've lost your license, you may need to hire somebody to drive you, so you're going to have those costs. Then you may lose the job altogether that's bringing you in money. That's thousands of dollars. And then you go to apply for life insurance. It may cause an increase in your cost of life insurance or a complete denial. I've had multiple people, because they've had multiple OVIs, they get denied by the insurance company to get life insurance because they're looking at them as a high risk. So these are things in which it's going to affect you so negatively. There are also certain types of investments that if you have these misdemeanors and felonies on your record, that it could cause you not to be eligible for those investments. This goes into, if you're doing some commercial banking as well, it could affect that. So this could be massively costly. Yeah. And it costs your reputation. I think that's another big thing. It's very costly to your reputation, not only within your family and friend circle, but professionally as well. And when you go to get a job, so that can really affect you. But talk about court costs. I mean, it's costly.
Very expensive. And there are minimum fees and fines and costs. You're looking at about $1,000 at a minimum.
Without an attorney.
Without an attorney.
You could have just got the Uber. No, I don't want to pay the $20 for the Uber.
But even sometimes with the attorney, you'll still have those types of statutory fines.
Well, you're going to have those fees plus the attorney.
Right. But you may be able to do something with that. But you might have the driving intervention program. You might have an assessment. You may have the probation fees. Attorney's fees.
And
you
so
see
what
those
he's talking
billboards.
About once everything is finalized, they typically make somebody who has had a DUI go through a program.
A weekend program, right?
Right. So and then you have to pay for that.
Yeah, and we're talking right now about a first offense. It still is. It's could be significant.
So if you're thinking, hey, the cost of the Uber is really high, I can make it home. No, pay for the Uber.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because the costs and fines and fees and the attorney are going to cost you so much.
Right, and there is the inconvenience and the stigma, and there's potential jail. But what if you are impaired and you cause an accident and seriously injure somebody? There is mandatory prison time, And that would be just, I mean, you want to talk about devastating not only the lives of the victim and their family, but your own life personally. So we all like to have a good time. There are so many ways to avoid driving under the influence of alcohol and avoid the court system. What we're talking about now is don't drink and drive at all.
Right. Or even if you are on prescription medication that could impair you. So it's not just drinking and driving.
Exactly.
Then make sure that you get a driver, pay for the ride service, the taxi, take another alternative way, get someone to drive.
And now with marijuana being legal, we're going to see a whole other development
well, in some
of the body
states,
of
they
law.
may not be. It depends what state they're in.
Yeah,
that they're watching this. Yes, in some states.
But now in Ohio, it's going to be legal, but you still can't be under the influence of marijuana and operate a motor vehicle. You couldn't do that previously. You're not going to be able to do that in the future. And then the whole other topic is, people with commercial driver's licenses and how
you would lose your livelihood. Talk about how costly.
And boy, that's a whole other seminar or topic that we can discuss. But if you find yourself in making even if you thought you were fine, and you find yourself being stopped and being investigated for possibly being under the influence, intervene, get that attorney
immediately.
If you are charged, get the attorney. There are a lot of challenges.
We've gotten a few phone calls when we're out to dinner at night and his phone rings, and it may be somebody who has your cell phone number that does get a hold of him and say, hey, I need this. And then also we have on your website, people contact you on the website, and it's usually any of these DUIs, they're usually later in the evening, is when people have contacted him, and then he finds out first thing in the morning when he's checking the email contacts.
So my message is simple. Don't put yourself in this situation. Number one, avoid it. Number two, if you are in the situation, get competent representation, somebody who knows the ins and outs. It is such a complex area of the law, and there's so many nuances, and there's so many constitutional and statutory and evidentiary challenges. It's an area, I mean, I've handled hundreds, and everyone is different. Every situation is different. There are always different legal issues, and even if you're charged, it's not the end of the world. It can be bad, but there are legal challenges that only a competent attorney who handles those types of cases are going to be able to advise you along the way and every step of the way. And what's interesting about it is, you're looking at, like I mentioned, the stop, the detention, the field sobriety test, the probable cause, the administration of the breathalyzer, the chemical, or if there's an act. There's so many legal issues. It's kind of it's complicated but common. So we see these issues, and you need competent.
And we want it to be less common. That's what we're hoping that this achieves today, that this holiday season, and at any time of the year, that you're making sure that you're safe rather than sorry, that you're not incurring this expense and incurring this situation in detriment to you and your family.
Right.
Any other last?
I would just say we lawyers are here to help if you put yourself in this unfortunate situation.
Don't put yourself in it.
But don't put yourself in that situation. Absolutely. And happy holidays to everybody. Be smart, be responsible. But it's too easy to say, well, I'm not under the influence. I can drink and drive. Just don't do it.
Just don't do it. That's the rule of thumb. And we wish you all a safe and happy holiday season.